Hello, listeners. If you are curious about technical communications, then this podcast is for you. On each episode, I will interview a guest who will share their unique journey. This is Inside TechCom with Zahra Matabana. Let's get started. I'm honored to welcome today's guest, Tina Davis. Hi, Tina. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to have you on my show and, just to learn a little bit about yourself. Now, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and I stole this quote from your profile. I've taken a long, adventurous road on my way to becoming a technical writer. And I think that's the perfect way to introduce yourself. Please tell us, what did that adventurous road look like?
That adventurous road looked like a couple of stints in college. And I did some work as an administrative assistant. I have taught dance. I've done a little bit of everything. And I think I'm the kind of person who feels like all of your life's experience inside and outside of your career really shape who you are. So technical communication is a second career for me. My first degree was from the University of Florida in television. And I actually spent some years as a television editor and as a news producer. I got out of that. And as I like to tell my friends, I spent my 30s kind of finding myself and doing all kinds of different things. When I moved to Texas, I met and married my husband, sort of was at that age where you start thinking about, what your next stage of your life is going to be. I really wanted to go back to school, get an English degree and scratch my itch to become a writer. But of course, like every wannabe writer, I'm like, well, I also need a real job to pay the bills. So I was starting back at school in my mid 40s at the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas, getting my English degree, but also was wondering what I could do writing wise to pay the bills. And my husband, who is in IT, has been an IT professional for about 20 years or so, just put a bug in my ear. You're rather technically minded and you're interested in technology and you're a good writer. You should check and see if your English department has any technical writing courses. And of course I said, what's technical writing? And he's like, I haven't worked with a lot of technical writers, but they're generally the people who explain things to other people. They write documentation and they make it easy for the people who are non-IT people to understand what we're working. I'm like, okay, I get behind that. And I was very lucky. The University of North Texas is rare in the fact that they have a standalone technical communication department with undergrad and graduate programs. So originally it was going to be, I'll take a few courses, I'll get a certificate. And then it sort of changed into a minor. And then the next thing I know, I graduated with a double minor in English and in technical communication. And so that was the culmination of going back to school and trying to find a second career. But as I've worked and done technical communication, I've really found that there are skills in my previous career and in my previous experiences that have really, really been helpful. And so that's the long, adventurous road. That might be changing now. What might be changing now is I don't think a lot of people wake up and say, I'm going to be a technical writer when I grow up. But I think that's actually changing. As technical writers get more exposure and people understand what technical communication, technical writing is and how that field is touching all kinds of other fields, they may not know that they want to be a technical writer when they grow up. But I think they kind of find their way there. And so, I think for me, whether you're changing careers or whether you're a young person who's, getting out of college the first time, there are more and more people who want to do the things we do.
I think everything that you said, there was a lot of, nuggets of information in there that I wish I could capture. I couldn't keep up with the notes, so I just gave up. One of the things that you said was, you thought about doing some certification and before you know it, you were doing a double minor, right?
A double major.
A double major. My apologies. A double major. But, you've not only transitioned, but you've transitioned and doing very successful in your role as a technical writer. And I say that because I personally have gotten to know you the last few years. And I've seen, in a manner of speaking, your journey into technical
Mhm.
writing and
Mhm.
how you became active outside of just the education that you were gaining.
Mhm.
And we'll kind of dive into that a little bit. But I want to go back to your awesome story that you shared with us about how you had that point in your life where you thought, okay, I need to get a job that will
Mhm.
pay me the bills.
Mhm.
I would like to kind of explore that question, that statement a little more. Were there other careers that you looked at and felt that, oh, compared to that, technical writing would pay me a little better? Did you do any research there? Anything that you would like to share?
I did a certain amount of research when I decided to at least get a minor in technical writing because I wanted to. Being completely unfamiliar with the career, I wasn't even sure what the pay scale was. And as you get closer to graduation, you start to think about things about your first job.
Mm-hmm.
If they ask you, "What do you want your salary to be?" or those kind of questions. For me, actually, one of the best sites was the National Labor site that has a lot of great statistics about technical writers as their median pay scale, information about growth or positive and negative growth as far as how many technical writers they anticipate will enter the marketplace and enter the workplace, different industries
Mm-hmm.
that technical writers work in. It's predominantly manufacturing, software, technology, those sort of things, but other things that you wouldn't think about. Medical, there's a need for technical communicators to make medicine and health and those kind of issues much more easier to digest. I think about the situation we're in with COVID and everything, about how information about the virus, vaccinations, we've all become sort of armchair epidemiologists, in the
That
last year.
right.
And I think about, every once in a while, whether it's an article or whether it's a white paper or something, there is somebody working to make all of this information that is very voluminous and very, very tough to grasp, easier to grasp, just to literally save lives. So, things like that, right? And so the national labor statistics on the field were very helpful for me as a student. That's how I met you. That's how I got involved as a student member of my local STC chapter. And that was helpful, seeing people who had taken this career and some were traditional technical writers as we think of, but some people had gotten into marketing and some people had gotten into UX and usability design, and some people had gotten into instruction design. And so just seeing all the different ways that you could take this knowledge and put it out there in the world was really helpful.
Thanks, Tina. That was going to be my follow-up question, as in, what did you do outside of education? And you kind of answered that.
Yes,
You
yes.
networked basically.
Getting involved is very important, and talking to other people. Again, that's one of the reasons why I consider myself lucky that I got into the program that I did. They're very encouraging because it's a separate program. They can really look at different ways to be a technical communicator. And so I met other students who were into usability design. I met students who wanted to be proposal writers. I met students who wanted to write medical white papers, and I met, God help them, I met kids who really wanted to do research. Research has never been the most fun thing for me to do, but I actually met students who were like, "Yeah, I'm maybe not the strongest writer, but I'm a great editor and I love research." And I'm like, "Bless you." And so there's a place for people who really, really want to dig down in the weeds and get into those details and do research. And so that was really cool about the program. And outside of that, I've tried to maintain some of those relationships, but networking, I think, is one of the biggest things you
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I think networking can definitely open your mind to
Mhm.
the opportunities that exist out there.
Yes.
But the interesting thing that you shared with me was through your education, you got to know students who were interested in all these different facets of writing, if you will.
Mhm.
I went to school as well, but that was a long time ago. So let's not talk about that. Uh, but, at the time, I think technical writing was a very, I wouldn't say a very stereotypical narrow field. It's just that I hadn't discovered it. But looks like the students today are more self-aware, and of course the education and kind of brings forth the 3D view of what the field can look like.
Yes, 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 it does.
That's very encouraging, actually.
It is. I think because of many different forces, colleges and universities are having to really, really, for lack of a better term, sell themselves to students. And as such, they are really, really open about what students can do with a degree and what courses are available to them and what paths are available to them. And they really want them to explore all those different paths in what should be a safe setting like college. You're not trying to pay the bills, or not trying to pay as many bills, I should say. You may have some support from family. And so it takes you a little longer, if you have to go a little sideways, you might try one major and that you find that that's not good for you. I met a number of students who are either getting a certificate, a minor, or even doing a double major in technical communication, not just at North Texas, but in other area universities, because I think maybe they're encouraged to do something that they feel is more stable and will make them more money, but they've always liked writing. And writing has always been the thing that they do on the side. And, they've always maybe they're an accountant, or maybe they're studying nursing or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
In their free time, in their spare time, they like to write, whether it's short stories or they are doing the group project. And, they're usually the one that writes. If there's a writing component to the group project, they're the person that's more comfortable with it. And so it gives them an opportunity to do things just for the joy of doing it. Mm-hmm. But they also find out that there's actually a career path in it. Wow. And so they're able to explore that as a secondary career path. And then sometimes when they explore it as a secondary career path, they find out it's the career path. And so they make changes like that. And so I think that's why it's really exciting to get into the field now, because traditionally it was about, you're the person that works at some shop, some manufacturer, some factory or whatever, and you're spitting out user guides and you're doing things that may not be the most glamorous thing in the world. But now, thanks to the internet and thanks to technology and all kinds of things, now what being a technical communicator is really expands. And so you can I've met people who wanted to be social media managers and things like that. They were really into content, and, content is king, and content is where we're all going to go eventually. They're able to explore that and, still make a decent living and still be, stable. And the bonus is they do something that they generally are excited and passionate about. So I think that's really great.
I think, what you said, right? I mean, if you enjoy writing, so that's the perk of getting into technical writing. You got to enjoy writing. Mm-hmm. I think that's the basic requirement.
Yes.
If you don't enjoy writing, then there may be other opportunities, but definitely something to consider. Are you just getting into this field for the money? But if you don't enjoy writing, you might want to reconsider.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good. Yeah, it's a very solid point. It's a very good point. Yes.
Yeah, I think so, because most technical writers, either they were new to the field. I mean, they just started off, they wanted this to be their career, or, interesting people like you who kind of are career changers, who've done many interesting things before they discovered technical writing.
Yes.
And then decided that this is going to be their next path.
Whether it's their sole path, or whether it's their primary path, or whether it's something they're exploring. There are a lot of technical writers who are frustrated fiction writers, quite frankly. And I think it is, whether we still do our fiction writing on the side or our poetry writing on the side, or whatever things that we do for a creative outlet, this allows us, like I said, to do something, to still touch that creative side and not turn it off when we're doing something that's more professionally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's really well said. You can kind of, yes, absolutely. You can nurture the creative side of yours while you try to have a stable income.
Yes.
But writing, I think, is definitely something that one should enjoy. considered a
Yes,
field.
yes, yes.
But, you had a lot of experience, Tina, from what you've shared with us. Did going to school bring you did also mention that you ran into these different, interesting students who want to have, these amazing careers. But personally speaking, for you, did the education really put you on a different level? I want you to share a little bit about that.
Yes. Always got a shout out for my program. Thank you, UNT. But
Yay, go UNT.
yeah. But I was really exposed to different kinds of courses and different kinds of aspects of creating content and explaining content to different audiences. So I got to take different classes like proposal writing. I had to learn HTML. I got to do things like create content using Adobe products and things like that. So I got to make brochures, I got to make infographics, I got to make everything where I had to convey information or convey an idea. And I got to use different tools. So I think that's something that education really does well. I think once you get into the field, you're very much constrained about what tools you use based on who employs you, right? And you don't really have a lot of time, even if you have interest or have a desire to learn other tools, you don't always have as much time. But the cool thing about education is you are exposed to multiple theories, you're exposed to multiple tools, you're able to learn things because you successfully create things, you're able to learn things when you fail at things, right? And you don't do as well. And so in addition to sort of teaching me about the theory and best practices and things that you do as a technical communicator, I got to really be engaged with how that is changing, right? How it was traditionally done to where the path is taking us now. And so in an academic setting, it was like the best way to that sort of thing.
Okay. And that's the value I want to drive through the podcast, is that if you're interested in writing and you know that you want to have a stable income, you can jump right into the field, but then why the education matters. And you shared with our audience the why. And I think everything that you touched upon makes a lot of sense. I come from a similar background and it definitely helped me, but you kind of attest to that.
Yes. Yeah. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
On the other hand, you also don't know what you might be interested in and might be really good at. And so I think a good programs that we have here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that are really, really striving to do this, so expose their students to all kinds of things. We'll expose them to a little bit of proposal writing. We'll expose them to a little bit of traditional, this is how you create a guide. This is how you create instructions. This is how you create these sort of things. And those programs are also dealing with the practicalities of the world today. Like, are we making physical guides as much as are we doing help? Are we doing help wikis, for a particular, and so you get to see where it came from, you get to see where it's going, you get to touch things, touch tools and touch and put out things that are really helpful.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that perspective with us, Tina. The one thing that I would also like to know more about is you've been an entrepreneur, which fascinates because I'm low on risk. So as you've been an entrepreneur.
Well, I don't know if creating your own podcast is low on risk.
Oh,
but yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but you've been an entrepreneur. Thank you for kind of take this undertaking. But at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur in your career to make an income is a different a level of risk, in my opinion. So can you speak to that a little bit and how that helped you to kind of transition into technical writing?
So one of the things that I think you have to be or have to be a good technical writer, you have to be very self-directed, and you have to be able to work under deadlines, and you have to be able to think creatively out of the box. And those are all things that you teach yourself or get exposed to or get taught when you are trying to run your own business. You don't have, whether it's you don't have a lot of money or you don't have a staff, you don't have all these things that companies have, small, medium, or large, to help them succeed. when you're first trying to get yourself out there, especially if you're not producing anything as you're selling a service. So you have to brand yourself. You have to really hustle, and you're putting in all the work, and you're doing all the work, and you're very self-directed. And I think that is something that helps me as a technical director. A lot of time, communicator, sorry. A lot of times, technical writers are on teams where they may be the sole writer, or there may be the sole writer for multiple teams. And it really requires them not only sort of, obviously producing the work that they're supposed to produce, but they're in charge of their own schedule. They're in charge of meeting with the subject matter experts. They're in charge of really, honestly, also putting themselves out there and reminding people what their value is to the organization. Mm-hmm. Those are all things you have to do as an entrepreneur. You have to sell yourself in a certain way and go, this is the value I bring. Please come to my bake shop, or in my case, please come to my events. I was trying to start my own event organization business. And so you're really selling yourself out there. You're really putting yourself out there and proving your value to people. But you're also very self-directed. You're coming up with your schedule. You're coming up with your events. You're coming up with the things that you're going to do. And in the beginning, you don't get a lot of support. And so I think those are skills that have really, really helped me as I changed careers.
Oh my. Yeah. Everything that you just shared, right? Mm-hmm. To me, it's like checking off boxes as you're talking about, especially if you're a lone writer. Mm-hmm. What skills can be transferable from any background that you've had? But if you've been an entrepreneur, trying to market yourself, mm-hmm. right? And that's something that technical writers, I think, again, this is anecdotal, but I feel technical writers can shy away from.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I did find that a lot of people that go on down this path, whether they're in the industry or whether they're in school, they're very kind of shy. And I don't know if that's just sort of the stereotypical shy writer type person who, kind of is in their own head and has their own ideas or what about it, but they don't tend to put themselves out there. And we need to do that more. I also find that they also tend to be, and it goes back to your original question about things I've learned, you have to be very organized. You have to be very detailed oriented. Mm-hmm. Not in this position, but as an entrepreneur, you have to be very organized. So you can't, there's not a lot of wiggle room to kind of let details or let things slip through the cracks. So those are things that I've learned, and those are things that I see in other technical writers, that they're very organized and they're very, sort of, they know what the job is, and they've got a detailed, methodical way of getting the job done.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. The one thing that I'm really interested in is if a technical writer had to show their value, promote themselves as an entrepreneur, Tina, do you have any suggestions for our audience that they can take away from your experience?
I think it would be helpful to start thinking about things in terms of what does your company produce? Are you on those teams that are producing something that's of value to the company? We don't talk enough about how it really matters that if you're writing for a product that is really integral to that company's mission, that you need to find a way to get yourself aligned with that product. So I think if there is something that technical writers can work on, is thinking or being more aware of terms of sort of the dollars and cents bottom line of things. Mm-hmm. And so we're very focused on, if we're on a particular team and, our job is to write guides or instructions for a particular, product or whatever we're doing, maybe we don't think about like what value that particular product has to the company or to the company's customers, and thinking about writing things that speak to that value. Because if you're on a team or you're on a group where the company sees value, you're going to get more resources, you're going to get more help. And so you want to put yourself in positions where you can, if you're not the primary writer, maybe you're helping the primary writer, review their documents or whatever. Try to get yourself on teams that are producing, high value products. Like think in those terms.
Thinking in those terms. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, it may not be easy, but definitely trying to see how you contribute. One thing I think I take away from your perspective is treating your deliverable, your documentation as a product itself,
Yes, your
right? Is that
documentation.
what you were alluding to?
Yes, that's a very good way to put it. And thinking of your documentation as a product, and thinking something of it that is bringing value,
Got it.
and thinking of it in its own way as a marketing document. And
Mm-hmm.
if you start thinking about that in those terms, not only will you fulfill your goal of obviously conveying the correct information to the user that needs it and all those things and compliance issues or whatever, but you are also proving your value to your employer,
Yeah.
and you are helping to burnish the brand of the employer. So you're bringing something to the game.
Something to the game. I think that's awesome. Absolutely. I have a lot of questions for you, Tina, but uh, and the more you share with me, the more questions I have. But I think I'm going to try to go back to some questions that I had jotted down that I wanted to ask in the interest of our audience. You are now working for a nonprofit.
Mhm.
And typically, when you think about technical writing, technical communications, you're thinking about high tech companies and that being technical and all of that. But there is this whole different industry that you can make your career in, and you made it there. You're in that career. So I want you to share a little bit about working for a nonprofit in terms of how did you get in there, what your current role is, and any advice that you have for somebody considering technical writing in for a nonprofit.
So my experience is pretty interesting and I think pretty different. The nonprofit that I work with has a partner in the for-profit sphere. I actually started as an intern for that for-profit company, and that's how I got noticed there. And so I was producing documentation, and I graduated after this internship. They offered me a full-time position, but they offered me a position as an analyst. So I'm technically a product specialist. But again, all of those skills that I use when I'm writing documentation, which I still do as part of my job, I'm bringing to the product, kind of before it's finished, right? And so those are all transferable skills. I think some of the things that are different about working with in a nonprofit sphere is, again, you don't have the same resources that you would have in a for-profit company, and like your nonprofits tend to be smaller organizations and you kind of do multiple things. You have your hand in multiple things. But again, if you've worked in nonprofits, maybe as a volunteer, or you've tried to run your own business, having different hats on and doing different roles and doing different things is not that out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the benefit to working, that nonprofit is devoted to one singular goal, and everybody's working toward that one singular goal. And it's usually in an area that is solving a problem, that needs to be solved in a very large scale. And so you get some satisfaction out of not only doing your job well, but solving a particular problem, whether you're, you're working for, just drawing a blank, because I'm trying to come up with examples that aren't particularly specific. But if you're working for a nonprofit, they're usually trying to solve a big goal that hasn't easily been solved, and you have some satisfaction in working towards solving that big goal that I think that a lot of times you don't get working at a for-profit corporation.
Yeah, I that definitely resonates with me. Like you said, you were working for a for-profit and you got noticed there. So congratulations for landing the gig that you're in. But in terms of building a portfolio for somebody who knows that nonprofit is what I want to do, is there anything different that a writer would do in your perspective? Like let's say, if you were to build a team of tech writers, what would you look for in their experience?
I think you would think about ways you are worked in that nonprofit or the nonprofit sphere that might have been outside of writing, because that experience would also be helpful for them. So if you're working for a medical nonprofit and you worked in that medical sphere, then I think even if you haven't been writing, that information, that experience, that energy that you bring from working within that sphere would be helpful for you.
Okay.
So if you're interested in working in nonprofits, don't think about, well, I just want to work in a nonprofit. Which nonprofit? Like, you could work in medicine, you can social work. Like there's all kinds of different types of nonprofits. You have to really kind of focus yourself and go, what kind of nonprofit I want to work in, and start gearing your experience towards that, because you might get in the door, not necessarily just for your writing experience as a technical communicator or technical writer, but you might get in the door because you have experience in that field and in that area. That's one thing. Two, a lot of nonprofits aren't looking for technical writers, so to speak, but they're looking for people who can write and manage their content. So you see a lot of content people, content writers, social media, things where, writing and communication skills are at a premium. I think that those are also things you want to look for if you're looking for a nonprofit job. So if you have an interest in something, in social work or things like that, or some sort of social problem, and you want to work for a particular nonprofit, your thing is you like to write and you're the good communicator and you like doing presentations and you like teaching people. There you go. That's your end.
That's okay. I think what I really liked about what you shared, something that I was unaware of, was I think of nonprofit as just one monolithic thing. And what you brought to my attention is that nonprofits have their own specializations, their own niche. And you need to start building like when you're working for a for-profit, you think of the industry that you're going to go into, right? Like medical, cybersecurity, be it whatever it is. Similarly, if you're thinking about nonprofits, you want to think about, I guess the word that comes to my mind is the industry that they are part of.
Yes.
And what problem are they trying to solve, and to build your career in that direction, or at least start building your skills and awareness
in that direction.
So that is something very, very critical, which had never come to my mind. And I've talked with enough technical writers out there who sometimes come ask me, hey, I want to get into nonprofit. And the only thing that I can tell them is, proposal writing. But what you opened my eyes to this world of thinking that is alien to me, that you have to think in terms of the industry that the nonprofit is part of, and content in general, and you can bring, you can be a contributor at so many different, in so many different ways.
Exactly. Proposal writing, as you remarked on, is the way that everybody sort of is aware of, and that's how they might get in.
Right.
But proposal writing is something that not everybody does well, and is extremely hard, extremely difficult. You've got to really be passionate about it. But there are other ways. If I don't want people who hear this that may not be into proposal writing think that there aren't other ways for you can get in. If you have a flair for graphic design, that's creating content. And if you have experience or knowledge in that particular nonprofit sphere, that's a way you can get in. But you'll never see it advertised as a technical writer. You'll see it advertised as something else. And so think about all those ways you can bring that your knowledge and your experience in technical communication and marry it with your interest in solving this particular problem or helping this particular thing, and go in that direction.
I always take away something personally for myself. And this has been one such conversation again. Now, we've touched upon many, many things. Is there anything that you would like to add that I may not have asked?
I think it's important, whether you're starting this career path for the first time or you're like me, who's changing careers midlife. I think it's important that no matter how busy you get, you carve out some time to learn. I personally place a high value on education, but it doesn't always have to be formal education. And there are so many ways to learn new skills, to learn new things, and to learn about new things and get your hands on new things that I think, especially those of us who have been in the career a while, we get bogged down in our day-to-day, jobs and tasks and what we need to do, or maybe we decided, it's time to change companies that we're working for, and maybe we're focused now on a new job. But we don't spend enough time, or we don't devote that time to, whether you want to call it training, continuing education, or just doing something that you're not the best at, and devoting some brain power to that, because I put it all under the umbrella of creativity. But you got to give yourself some time to be creative. And so if you're like me and you're a frustrated writer, I think obviously there'll be ebbs and flows, and there'll be times when you have more time to spend to it. But don't forget your writing. If you got into writing because you like to write poetry, give yourself time to write poetry. Or if you are a technical writer who has some design skills, don't let those fall by the wayside. Just do things, whether you create a brochure for somebody because they need help with something, or you just create something just to create. Like, spend some time, give yourself some time to be creative and to learn new things. And I think that'll go a long way.
Yeah, that's so important, Tina, what you said, right? The way I hear it from you is that me time.
Yeah.
Me time that can give you some time to kind of, like, we get into this industry because we enjoy writing, but after a point, it becomes a drill.
Yes. Yeah.
So you need to go rediscover why you got into this in the first place.
Exactly.
And like you said, if you enjoy writing poetry, go back to it. And that's my go-to, actually.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is I fully agree with you on that, to cultivate things that have fallen by the wayside, because that eventually helps you in your day-to-day, eventually.
Yes. And I think just being creative generally makes it easier for you to be creative when you have to do it on a deadline.
Honestly.
You have to think, when you have to solve a problem outside of a box, or you have to do something at work and it requires a creative solution. If you're already flexing those muscles when you don't need them, when you need them the most, it'll be so easier, I should say. I don't want to say it's so easy. It'll be easier to flex those muscles when you really need them. And I think we all get into, myself also, like, I find myself going, when's the last time I wrote, something, a short story or a little essay or anything? I gotta spend some time, and I gotta flex those muscles, because you don't want to lose it. When's the last time I designed something?
Yeah,
I think I did anything that was creative, that was outside, it wasn't work for work.
I like your phrase, flexing those muscles, because when you don't flex those muscles, they can waste away.
So you got to flex them waste away.
Exactly. And you already have it. So to flex them, it won't be too hard to build them.
It shouldn't be too hard to build it. Ideally, when you've been in shape and maybe you've let that quarantine weight go back, it should be a little bit easier to get those pounds off, because but if you're starting from the beginning, it's a little rough.
Right. But not to give up on that,
don't give up on it.
Don't give up on it. Oh my God, this has been such a fascinating conversation, Tina. I think one last question before I let you go. Mm-hmm. Besides all the advice that you've given us, to our audience, right? The different insights that you've shared with us, are there any resources that you would like to recommend?
If you have a local, I don't know what your reach is going to be for your podcast, so I would assume you're going to be worldwide. If you have a local STC chapter, find your local STC chapter and get involved. Meet people, network. If you're here in the DFW area, please find our Lone Star chapter and meet cool people like Zora and other technical writers in the area. Young, old, all in between. People who. That's what I dig about it. There are people who have been technical writers all their careers. There have been people who are doing this as a second career, who used to be teachers and used to do all kinds of other things. You can actually meet people who are teaching, educators right now who are teaching technical writers to new students. And so all of that is really cool. So find your local STC chapter. If there's a blog I'm into, it would be probably Tom Johnson's I'd Rather Be Writing
I would rather be writing.
blog. Yeah, he's kind of one of my favorite ones. That's the first one that pops in my mind.
I think we've had such a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate it. As you can see, I'm kind of at a loss for words, but without taking too much of
This has been
unnecessary.
really fun. Thank you for inviting me to this.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I want to thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge with us, Tina. Thank you and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share on your social media to help me reach a wider audience. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app, including Apple, Google, or Spotify. Follow us on Twitter at InsideTechCom or visit us at www.insidetechcom.show for the latest updates. Catch you on another episode.